Hi, and welcome to CSO Connected. I'm Tamara McMillan, and today we're going to explore the topic of talent and recruitment. Finding great talent is really hard, and keeping them is perhaps even harder, particularly in today's economy. Harvard Business Review estimated in 2017 that in sales, an average of 27% was the turnover. And in that same year, LinkedIn's study revealed that that number might be as high as 35%. Obviously, losing great people is not only difficult to our revenue stream, but it makes operating the business with continuity really difficult. So today we're going to speak to somebody who is an expert in this area. I'd like you to welcome with me Gerry Hill. He's the Chief Revenue Officer of Eva.ai. So Gerry, tell us a little bit about yourself and about Eva.ai.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Eva.ai. We're an automation and cognitive technology company that works with senior leadership and executives in HR suites in enterprise to automate the top of the recruitment funnel and ultimately eliminate a lot of wasteful tasks that are associated with the tool administration and administrative processes that go alongside recruiting at scale.
Okay. I want to come back to the automating the top of the funnel because I think that was really interesting. But you're a special guy besides your professional current career. Rumor has it that you played rugby for about 15 years professionally and semi-professionally. Is that rumor true?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I was just a big lump that happened to be quite sort of aggressive and rambunctious. And, you know, when you're blessed with that sort of genetic profile, you get picked up by rugby clubs at a young age. It was a remarkable experience. I got to sort of travel a lot. I got to meet interesting and very, very compelling people. And, you know, I got a lot of lateral learning from it that I think I've been able to carry forward into my commercial career. So it was really compelling.
I can only imagine how special that time in your life has been. As a lump then, who was your most interesting or perhaps most memorable person that you met that maybe left an imprint on you?
I mean, there have been quite a lot. I think the most sort of compelling guy was a guy called Russell Earnshaw who basically is now in charge of sort of developing England's under-20s and under-18s.
Oh, wow.
But a very dynamic, thoughtful person, super creative, didn't really drive things through a playbook.
Okay.
It was very much, you know, what's the requirement? How do we do this better? And he got us as players to think about it rather than just sort of use traditional and conventional coaching methods, which at the time was quite revolutionary. And it's quite a brutal environment as well. I think when I moved into business from rugby, the transition was quite hard. And it was hard because, you know, whilst rugby teaches you a lot of innate stuff, it actually doesn't allow you to develop as a human being when you're in a professional sports environment. You have people telling you what to wear, where to be, what to eat, what to do with about 80% of your day. So the ability to sort of think for yourself is something that gets a bit lost. I think the other thing that I found about working in business straight out of rugby was the lack of accountability and honesty in enterprise versus the environment that we came from in that rugby environment. It was brutal, it was peer-led. You know, if you messed up, people told you every single day, so you had to be accountable to that. You can't get away with some of that stuff in the work environment. HR gets involved. And I think that was sort of quite an interesting conditioning effect. So if there's one thing that I'm still missing or chasing in my life is that sort of radical candor environment where, you know, you can be completely and brutally honest with people about performance. And, you know, you end up chasing that still.
I think that type of transparency, particularly in leadership, and that authenticity is something that we do see in some of the greatest leaders out there, but it is quite difficult to achieve in a corporate environment. But I have to believe that if we keep going with it, that'll happen. And you also, when you were speaking there, you talked about, I think, an example of leading from the front, which is not just telling you how to do it, but showing you and coming alongside. You also mentioned some things that were challenging in that transition into business. But I imagine being a professional athlete, of course, it takes so much discipline, commitment, really working, you know, no matter what the pain is at times. What were those positive attributes or skills that have helped you as you've come into business and particularly in sales?
I think it's endeavour, right? More than anything, it's endeavour. Knowing that if you've got a goal, you can find ways to achieve it through hard work. You know, you don't get opportunities to perform at a high level at many things in life, but the one thing that gets you there is knowing that you can put in extra work, do more, lift more, eat better, sleep harder, right? And if you can sort of transition with that mindset into your professional life, then I think you're going to equip yourself. And if we put that acutely into the lens of a sales job, most people start in an inside sales job or an SDR job somewhere. If you're the last person in making that last call, then you're giving yourself the best chance of success. And, I don't think that you can sort of necessarily learn that in a university environment or a school environment. It's either something that you want to do or not do to build a better life for yourself.
So finding talent, as I mentioned a bit earlier, is hard. It's hard to find great talent. It's really hard to retain them. And when we go about finding talent, we usually look either for performers, people that are going to come in and do what they've done before, be the rainmakers in sales, or we hopefully want to retain them. And I think it's often looked at as an either or. And what's your approach to whether we should be focused on hiring performers or hiring talent that we can retain?
Yeah, I think firstly, talent's an overused word. Right, fundamentally. To be talented puts you in the top 1%. To be skilled puts you in the sort of next 2 to 20%. So talent's probably something we need to revisit. I think secondly, a lot of people don't understand what they're recruiting for, specifically into a sales function. Each component of a sales job is uniquely different, but if you treat it all as the same, then you're never going to get the same outputs that you're anticipating or expecting. And then lastly, too many people don't emphasize retention as their number one reason to recruit. The business pain, the lost continuity, the cost of losing potential consistent performance is brutal to most organisations. Now, certain types of company can tolerate that because of their existing market presence, their size of their P&L and their revenue costs, etc. But for the majority of companies, which are fundamentally SMEs, that's brutal.
Yeah.
If you've got people on a consistent cycle of churn. So we really believe deeply that your mindset should be to recruit for people that are going to execute against the requirement of the specific job that you're hiring against. And will they add value and be consistent through their entire life cycle of performance? And trying to find a way to predict that is really tough, because the conventional wisdom says you do one of three things. You hire a recruiter, you either go to market yourself, or thirdly, you so to speak, to networks in order to find access to those people. And all three of those sort of propositions are flawed, fundamentally. Recruiters, because they're incentivized around a commission basis, which ultimately skews or distorts the value of the candidate that you're potentially meeting. Secondly, they don't want to work inside of that process that you might want to work inside because it diminishes their commercial value to you. By going directly to market, well, guess what? You're not an expert. It's not your day job. Whilst you should be recruiting all the time, you're not actually an expert at recruiting. And then thirdly, it's, your network's probably going to give you some awesome juice to go out and recruit against, but, whether or not those people are going to be empowered in your environment with your proposition, your marketplace, and all of the other things that make people successful in sales is a huge unknown quantity.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting. It's like a vicious cycle. Often we use job descriptions that are outdated or don't really ask for what our business needs or what we really want. We then have people interviewed by people whose day job is not interviewing or assessing skills, and so we tend to either hire somebody that looks and smells like us, or we think we could be friends with, and they seem to have what it takes to get the job done. And then the onboarding piece, I think, is where many, many companies fail. And I know I've had conversations with my leaders and said, we seem to have a turnstile of people coming in and out of the door. How is it that the most qualified and talented person on the day we offer them the job became the worst person on your team? And so what do you advise to tackle some of those challenges around how we're writing those job descriptions, how we're bringing people in and engaging them in the interview process, and then, why aren't we onboarding them well?
Yeah, so we've plagiarised and adapted Mark Roberge's model that he used at HubSpot, which is a quantifiable measure of 23 sales characteristics. His version was 17, I believe, but we've extended it out to include 23 things. And they include things like likability or, intelligence, and we can test and assess those through an interview process in a qualitative and a quantitative way. Each one of those is weighted to the specific requirement of a job. So if I'm hiring for SDRs, I don't really care about their likability particularly as a leading indicator of their success. I just need to know that they're going to get on the phone 100 times a day and they're going to book me 2 meetings.
But how
So
does
their
that...
likability is immaterial to their job success, but their persistence and their other value drivers are more material. If I'm hiring an enterprise account executive though, that likability piece and their intellect and their raw ability to stitch together complex environments is absolutely quintessential to their success. So we measure an index for that. But by going through that exercise, it gives you 3 or 4 different work streams, right? If you know what you want and you're able to quantify it and weight it against the requirement of that job, just by something as simple as that framework, it then enables you to write a really probing and well-crafted job description that speaks to the market of people that you're trying to hire. We've actually seen some really weird results from that though. One is just sheer volume of people that actually applied to the job.
Okay.
Because you're not dressing yourself up as the sexiest or the best, because you're speaking to the actual brutal, honest truth of what that person will have to do. So instead of getting 50 inbound applicants through LinkedIn a week, you might only get 5. But that self-selection in and of itself is a really, really good leading indicator about whether or not the people that are applying to even participate are going to be contributing value to the company. So I'd rather have less of higher quality of people who've actually read the honest description of what they'll be doing over and above somebody that's taken a templated approach to a generic sales job and then added a few little twists and turns about your company's missions and values. That's not a solid exercise. And on the JD point, you know, LinkedIn basically ran some analysis where they suggested that 80% of all job descriptions for sales and marketing jobs across all value chains and segments are fundamentally the same.